J. Edgar Hoover was a legend, an idol. In the words of his obituary in the New York Times, he was the most powerful official in the long span of the American government. He was not just its director, he was the face of the FBI. He was the FBI. Hoover's birthday is still honored as a holiday in the FBI, and absurdly, every agent must memorize it. Even today, when many Americans think of the agency, Hoover is the first image to come to mind, though he perished 40 years ago. He molded the FBI into what it is today. He grew the agency from 650 employees to the globe-spanning network of tens of thousands we know today, but he also had another, darker legacy. On March 8, 1971, the FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania was burglarized by a group of only 8 citizens who called themselves the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI. The Citizens Commission believed that the FBI was hiding something, and because of Hoover's influence over the government, the Bureau's actions were rarely questioned. These 8 citizens were brought together by Professor William C. Davidon and included John Raines, his wife Bonnie Raines, Keith Forsyth, Robert Williamson, and 3 others who went under fictitious names: Susan Smith, Ron Durst, and Janet Fessenden in 2014 when the others revealed their identity. Although this group had a lot to lose considering many were parents of small children, they agreed that the gains to be made were well worth the risk. While casing the FBI office located in Media, which had been stationed on the 2nd story of an apartment complex, Bonnie Raines, who at the time was pretending to be a college student and conducting interviews about the job opportunities for women in the Bureau, noticed the lack of electronic security systems. This allowed the group to get into the office equipped with suitcases to make it appear as if they were residents of the building leaving for a trip or vacation. Once in the office, they collected all of the files and took them into the Raines attic, where they then read through them and learned about the program COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was a secret and often illegal project used to target people whom the FBI deemed subversives. This could simply be citizens who opposed the war in Vietnam, as well as many civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr., who is said to have received a letter from Hoover encouraging him to commit suicide. The files were then sent to the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Only the Washington Post published it instead of returning the documents to FBI custody. Soon after, all newspapers were spreading the story. The people of America didn't know how to react to the information. The man they had respected and trusted to investigate federal crimes, the one who had become an influential celebrity, had been spying on them. This completely altered the people's perception of J. Edgar Hoover, and for the first time, the Federal Bureau of Investigation had been taken under investigation.
And then the story broke, and it changed the conversation. It just did a complete change in terms of the federal investigation of the FBI and people's opinions about the FBI too. It was a wake-up call.
This was just the tip of the iceberg, however. Under Hoover, the wiretap program took off. Based on a minor wartime law, the Espionage Act of 1917, which was intended to prevent foreign infiltration of American military institutions, the director executed a massive network of thousands of taps all over the country. Although some of these did indeed help catch communist agents, the vast majority were simply unwarranted intrusions into the private lives of law-abiding American citizens. Another major ethical conundrum was the notorious secret files. Hoover and the FBI had files on anyone and everyone. No congressman or senator dared challenge him for fear of the inevitable accidental leak about some back deal they made years ago. Even presidents had to beware of the director, for he kept files on them too. Hoover knew all about JFK and LGBT's extramarital affairs. Towards the end of his term, he was aware of the existence of Nixon's plumbers, essentially the president's own FBI, caused by his rapidly cooling relationship with Hoover. These plumbers, so called because they fixed Nixon's problems for him, were the perpetrators of Watergate. Even celebrities from Groucho Marx to Elvis Presley had files, with the content ranging from allegations of communism to tidbits on their sex lives, a favorite of Hoover's. Even worse, the director often employed his personal prejudices. A lifelong conservative, he used his influence to damage liberal causes. In 1952, Hoover came out swinging against Democratic nominee Adlai Stevenson with rumors of homosexuality. He also persecuted anti-Vietnam protesters and civil rights leaders in the 1960s.
Is it simply protection from those that people in high places think want to do us dangerous harm, such as women's liberation movement, according to J. Edgar Hoover? No, that whole question of what needs to be protected and how do we go about protecting the First and Fourth Amendment rights, the freedoms, the civil liberties that make America something that we want to protect.
This movement and the belief that citizens had the right to know what was going on and how they were being affected by federal agencies has continued to modern times with the NSA's unwarranted wiretapping and the recent release of the CIA's torture report.
For many years, it backed them off until 9/11, and then all bets were off in the government.
The CIA recently released a report on the treatment of detainees at various facilities, particularly Guantanamo. These extended interrogations included waterboarding, placing victims in multiple stress positions for extended periods of time, keeping prisoners awake for as long as a week consecutively, and chaining their hands to the ceiling with bags over their heads. In multiple instances, the information given was noticeably false or insignificant. Even though the Bureau knew these details were unuseful, they commonly acted on them anyway, just to give the agents the feeling that what they were doing was being justified. Naturally, the public was outraged upon hearing of these actions, not just because it was a major infringement of the human rights of the prisoners, but it showed our government was capable of these horrendous acts, leaving the possibility open for them to infringe the liberties of the American people themselves. The National Security Agency is a United States governmental institution dedicated to the security of today's America. Nowadays, the NSA still utilizes many of the same techniques pioneered by Hoover. Spies still lurk in the shadows of cyberspace, people are still under surveillance, and secrets are still being kept by our government. In 2013, Edgar Snowden leaked thousands of documents pertaining to the surveillance techniques of the NSA. Snowden's whistleblowing gave the average citizen the knowledge of many top-secret privacy infringements. The NSA currently has the capability to monitor every phone call and email that gets sent in the US, along with practically every single thing that a user does on the internet. This has caused an outrage among the American people. While the use of these tactics is still largely intact, the tolerance of them in the eyes of the public has slowly decreased, drawing a close similarity to the status of the FBI after the burglary at Media.
I'm not saying we should do away with NASA and CIA. No. I'm saying we need a new discussion, just like we needed a new discussion about the FBI back in the 60s and 70s.
The American government is a great experiment. Although it is by no means perfect, it has worked wonders and has led our country through a storied past and towards a great future. Yet there is a cancer upon it, an insidious tumor infecting our nation. We must not accept this assault on our civil liberties. We must not give in to the few who wish to lord over the many. All the eyes in the sky, from Hoover to the present, have been malign presences on our homeland. A small nail was planted with the Espionage Act of 1917, but Hoover and his successors in surveillance have twisted it, until the pinpoint prick has become a gaping hole gushing blood. By not cracking down on his excesses, we have sent an implicit message of acceptance. This has led to the appalling insensitivity of modern NSA, and the abominable punishments inflicted at the fish shop at Guantanamo. Through a brutal program of repression, we are failing the great principles of the Founding Fathers and Enlightenment thinkers that our nation was founded upon.
Since you have your cell phones on, probably they're listening to us up there right now. But that's all right.